We're embarrassed to call you our daughter. Dad's words from last night echoed in my mind as I stared at the Forbes magazine lying open on my desk. The article spread across 2 pages under the headline, 30 Under 30 Healthcare Innovators Changing the World. No photos, no real names that just be Thompson, and a detailed analysis of how my memory palace algorithms were revolutionizing cognitive rehabilitation. The journalist had called me an anonymous genius reshaping an entire medical field. But to my family, I was still the basement creep who couldn't get a real job. They wanted to be embarrassed. Perfect. Tonight at David's engagement party, surrounded by the medical elite they wore ripped, I would give them something to really be embarrassed about. Not their failure daughter, but their secretly successful daughter who'd been playing them for fools for 10 years. The basement creep was about to become their worst nightmare. I closed the magazine and looked around my workspace. What they saw as a pathetic basement hideout was actually the command center of an $85 million company. 3 walls lined with monitors displayed real-time data from our servers, 8.2 million active users, $400,000 in daily revenue, clinical improvement statistics that would make medical researchers weep with envy. I opened my email and found the message I'd been waiting for. Dr. Thompson, the Apple acquisition team, is ready to finalize our $85 million offer for Cognoplay Games. We need your decision by Friday. $85 million for the company they thought was my computer hobby. I saved the email and stood up, stretching muscles tight from hours of coding. The basement that had been my prison was about to become my liberation. Tonight, when Dr. Harrison and Dr. Johnson realized who I was, when they started praising my work in front of my family, when the medical professionals they worshipped revealed the truth they'd been blind to, that would be the moment the basement creep stepped into the light. The memory of last night's family dinner played on repeat in my mind like a cruel soundtrack. Dad's voice, clinical and cold. "Brooke, we need to discuss your future. You're an embarrassment. A 27-year-old living in our basement playing computer games while your brother builds a real career. Computer games. If only they knew." My fingers found the acceptance letter from MIT that Dad had torn up 9 years ago. I'd taped it back together and framed it, not as a monument to lost opportunity, but as a reminder of the moment I learned that my family's approval was optional. They'd cut off my college funding because they refused to support my basement creep fantasy. So, I'd worked 3 jobs, lived on ramen, and coded until 3 a.m. every night to earn my computer science degree. While they slept comfortably upstairs, I was building the foundation of a medical revolution in their basement. The basement they were so ashamed of had become my fortress. I opened my laptop and reviewed tonight's guest list. 30 of Chicago's most prestigious medical professionals. Dr. Harrison from Harvard, Dr. Johnson from the NIH, all of them unknowing beneficiaries of my research. All of them worshipped by my family as the pinnacle of medical achievement. None of them knowing that the failed daughter had been their secret weapon all along. I looked at my reflection in the black computer screen. Tomorrow, everything would be different. Tomorrow, they would see me clearly for the first time. But tonight was about justice. 10 years of being called a failure while secretly succeeding beyond their wildest dreams. 10 years of hiding my achievements to protect their feelings. 10 years of being the disappointment while actually being the family's greatest success. Tonight, all of that ended. I climbed the stairs from my basement sanctuary, leaving behind the world where I was docked. Brooke Thompson, CEO and medical innovator. Upstairs, I would return to being the family embarrassment, but only for a few more hours. The basement creep was about to introduce herself to the world. Family meeting, living room. Now, Dad's voice carried the authority of 30 years in medicine, cutting through the house like a scalpel. I climbed the stairs from my basement office, leaving behind the world where I was a successful CEO, and entered the space where I was still the family disappointment. They were assembled in formation when I arrived. Dad sat in his leather recliner, the throne from which he delivered countless medical pronouncements over the years. Mom perched on the edge of the sofa, her hands folded in that particular way that meant serious conversation. David sprawled in the armchair across from Dad, wearing the smug expression of the successful son. I took the remaining seat, the wooden chair from the dining room that had been dragged in specifically for this intervention, the defendant's chair. Brooke, we need to have an honest conversation about your future, Dad began, his voice taking on the clinical tone he used with difficult patients. You're 27 years old. Most of your high school classmates are married with children, building careers, contributing to society. I nodded politely while mentally reviewing the email. I'd received an hour ago from the Stanford Medical School dean inviting me to speak at their upcoming neuroscience symposium. Amanda has built a real career helping people, Mom added, her voice carrying that particular maternal disappointment I'd learned to tune out. She saves lives every day as a nurse. She's respected in her field. People value her contribution to society. Amanda, David's fiancée, who made $65,000 a year and thought she was changing the world by working 12-hour shifts. Last month, I donated more than her annual salary to cognitive research funding. What do you contribute to society with your computer activities? Dad continued, leaning forward like a prosecutor making his closing argument. Computer activities. I almost laughed. Yesterday, the NIH had approved my research proposal for a $25 million grant to study cognitive rehabilitation in trauma victims. But to him, I was playing computer games. I've talked to other mothers whose children had similar phases, Mom said, her voice taking on that conspiratorial tone she used when discussing family embarrassments. Dr. Jennifer Williams deals with adults who can't transition to real-world responsibilities. She specializes in technology addiction and social dysfunction. Technology addiction. Social dysfunction. The labels they assign to my extraordinary success. Maybe it's time to consider professional help. She continued, there are counselors who understand these issues, people who can help you develop realistic career goals. David shifted in his chair, preparing to deliver what he clearly thought would be the killing blow. Look, Brooke, I get it. Computers are fun, but they're not a career. The medical field is always hiring. You could start in data entry, work your way up to something respectable. Data entry for the woman who'd revolutionized cognitive medicine. Amanda could put in a good word for you at Northwestern Memorial. He continued, his voice taking on that patronizing tone. Older siblings perfect. You could finally do something meaningful with your life. Meaningful like helping 8.2 million people maintain their cognitive function wasn't meaningful. I appreciate your concern, I said carefully, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. But I'm actually doing quite well with my current work. Dad's eyebrows shot up in that particular expression of medical skepticism. Brooke, as a medical professional, I'm concerned about your psychological well-being. Isolation, obsessive computer use, inability to form normal relationships. These are textbook signs of antisocial personality disorder. Antisocial personality disorder. Or building a company that employed 45 people and had a waiting list of job applicants. Your basement lifestyle isn't sustainable, he continued, warming to his diagnosis. It's pathological. You're living in a fantasy world, avoiding real responsibility and adult relationships. I thought about the Harvard professorship offer I'd received 3 hours ago. $300,000 plus research funding to teach the next generation of cognitive scientists. But to Dad, I was pathologically avoiding responsibility. What will people think when they ask about our children? Mom's voice cracked with genuine distress. David is in medical school training to save lives. And Brooke lives in our basement playing computer games. The pain in her voice was real. And for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. She was genuinely embarrassed by what she saw as my failure. She had no idea she was embarrassed by a success story that would make medical history. It's humiliating to explain to our friends, she continued. Dr. Peterson asked about you last week. What was I supposed to say? That our daughter is 27 and unemployed. Unemployed. I made more in a month than Dr. Peterson made in a year. David leaned forward with the cruel clarity of someone delivering a brutal truth. Amanda graduated summa cum laude from nursing school. She works 12-hour shifts, saving actual human lives. She owns her own condo, has a 401k. She's building equity. He paused for maximum impact. Meanwhile, you're creating what? Entertainment for losers. When are you going to grow up and join the real world? Entertainment for losers. The losers included combat veterans recovering from traumatic brain injuries, stroke survivors regaining speech patterns, and elderly people maintaining their independence instead of requiring nursing home care. But I couldn't tell them that. Not yet. We're not angry, Brooke, Dad said, his voice softening into what he probably thought was paternal concern. We're disappointed. We raised you to be better than this, better than revolutionizing cognitive medicine, better than helping millions of people, better than building an $85 million company from nothing, but somehow you became this basement creep who can't face reality. He continued. And there it was, the nickname that had defined me for 15 years. Then he said something that revealed exactly who he was underneath the concerned father facade. You know, we keep hearing about this B. Thompson researcher at medical conferences. Some computer person who's supposedly revolutionizing cognitive training. His voice carried barely concealed disdain, probably another Silicon Valley charlatan selling snake oil to desperate families. These tech people prey on hope. Brooke, that's not real medicine. My heart stopped. He knew the name. He'd heard about my work at medical conferences and dismissed it as charlatanism. The old ways of treating patients have worked for generations, he continued, completely unaware he was describing my life's work as fraudulent. These new-fangled computer treatments are just expensive placos. Real medicine requires human interaction, not screen time. I stared at him in stunned silence. He wasn't ignorant of my field. He was actively hostile to it. He'd taken everything I'd built and dismissed it as snake oil without ever considering that his basement creep daughter might be involved. Something crystallized in that moment as I looked at their expectant faces. They would never see me as anything but a problem to be solved. A burden to be managed, a source of shame to be hidden. Tonight at David's engagement party, that would change forever. Not because I wanted to hurt them, but because I was done living in the shadow of their limitations. I excused myself and walked back toward the basement stairs, feeling their concerned gazes follow me. In a few hours, Dr. Harrison and Dr. Johnson would arrive, the medical authorities my family worshipped as gods. The same authorities who worshipped my work without knowing my name. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. The basement creep was about to have the last laugh. The guilt set in within an hour, just as I'd expected. Brooke, honey, could you help arrange these flowers? Mom's voice carried that artificially sweet tone she used when she knew she'd gone too far. The post-confrontation remorse was as predictable as her medical charts. I emerged from the basement to find the house transformed for David's engagement party. Crystal vases lined the dining room table, elegant place cards marked each seat, and the good china, the set reserved for truly important occasions, gleamed under the chandelier. Of course I'll help, I said, taking the white roses from her hands. This is David's big night. I want everything to be perfect. She smiled with relief, probably thinking my cooperation meant their intervention had worked, that I'd seen the light and would start applying for data entry positions on Monday. Dad appeared in the doorway, medical journal tucked under his arm. You know we love you, right? His voice carried that particular mix of authority and affection that had shaped my childhood. We just want what's best for you. Maybe I was too forceful earlier, he continued, settling into damage control mode. Your path might be unconventional, but as long as you're working toward independence? Independence? If only he knew I'd been completely financially independent for 3 years. What will you wear tonight? Mom asked, her voice taking on that motherly concern that sounded genuine because it was, "You want to look professional? Dr. Harrison is such an important guest. He's published over 200 medical papers, 203, actually. I'd read them all, especially the 17 that cited my research without knowing it. David is so excited to introduce Amanda to him," she continued, arranging roses with the focused attention she usually reserved for pharmacy calculations. "It's wonderful when young people can meet their heroes." Meet their heroes. The irony was exquisite. David bounded into the room with a nervous energy of someone whose entire future hinged on one evening. "Brooke, you're helping. That's great." He paused, and I could see him choosing his words carefully. "Look, forget what I said earlier about being embarrassed. You're my sister, that's what matters. Just maybe don't mention the computer stuff tonight," he added quickly. Harrison is old school. That he might not understand modern hobbies. Modern hobbies like revolutionizing the field he devoted his life to studying. "Dr. Harrison sounds like a remarkable man," I said, my voice perfectly neutral while inside I smiled at the memory of his latest email. "B. Thompson, your algorithms have exceeded every expectation. When can we meet?" Amanda appeared from the kitchen, looking radiant in the way that engaged women always do. "Brooke, I'm so glad you're here." She pulled me aside with the conspiratorial air of someone sharing a secret. "Can I tell you something personal?" she whispered, glancing around to make sure we weren't overheard. My heart stopped. "Of course. My grandmother has early-stage dementia," she said, her voice dropping even lower. "But this app called Memory Palace has been incredible for her. Her memory scores improved 40% in just 2 months. I felt like I'd been struck by lightning." "Really? How? How did you find out about it?" "My supervisor at Northwestern Memorial recommended it," she said. "Whoever created it is a genius, some mysterious woman who never makes public appearances. The developer is like a ghost in the medical community." Amanda's eyes lit up with genuine enthusiasm. "Brooke, I'd love to meet her someday. The way her technology helps people, it's like she understands exactly what families go through when someone they love starts losing their memories." I managed to keep my voice steady. "It sounds like remarkable work. It is the developer. Her name is B. Thompson. She's revolutionized cognitive rehabilitation. My grandmother can remember my name again, Brooke. She can follow conversations, play card games with us. It's given our whole family hope." I stood there watching Amanda's face glow with gratitude for work I'd done in secret. Work my family dismissed as computer games. Work that had given her grandmother back pieces of herself. "Dar Harrison will be here soon," David announced, pacing nervously through the living room. "This is huge for me, Brooke. He could influence my residency placement at Johns Hopkins." He stopped and looked at me directly. "Please don't mention your computer activities. I need him to focus on medicine, on real achievements. Can you just be normal tonight? For me? Normal?" The word that had haunted me for 19 years. I retreated to my room to prepare for the evening. In my closet hung the dress I'd worn to accept the Digital Health Innovation Award at Carnegie Hall. The same dress Forbes had photographed me in for their 30 Under 30 feature. Tonight, it would serve a different purpose. Tonight, it would be my armor. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone different than the woman who'd sat in that defendant's chair an hour ago. Not the basement creep they'd created in their minds. Not the failure they'd convinced themselves I was. I saw Dr. Brooke Thompson, CEO and innovator. The woman who'd helped millions of people. The daughter they'd never bothered to actually know. This wasn't about revenge anymore. Somewhere in the space between their guilty apologies and Amanda's unknowing gratitude, my motivation had shifted. I was doing this for the 16-year-old girl who'd been told her dreams were impossible. For the 21-year-old who'd been cut off financially for pursuing her passion. For the 27-year-old who still apologized for extraordinary success. Tonight, she would finally be free. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Harrison's assistant. Dear Harrison is running 5 minutes late, but very excited to meet the Thompson family. I smiled at my reflection. In 30 minutes, Dr. Harrison would walk through our front door. In 35 minutes, he'd shake hands with the mysterious B. Thompson he'd been trying to identify for 2 years. In 40 minutes, everything would change. But first, I had to survive the revelation. I smoothed my dress and walked downstairs where my family waited in blissful ignorance of what was about to unfold. They saw their problematic daughter joining them for David's big night. I saw the final scene of a 10-year deception about to reach its conclusion. The basement creep was ready for her moment in the light. Emergency family meeting. Dining room. Now, Dad's voice cut through the house with surgical precision. We'd barely finished arranging the flowers when he summoned us back for what I recognized as final battle preparations. We assembled around the dining table like generals planning a campaign. Dad stood at the head, his medical authority radiating through the room. Mom clutched a guest list like battle plans. David sat rigid with pre-performance anxiety. Tonight's guest list is extraordinary, Dad began, his voice carrying the weight of 30 years in medicine. Dr. Harrison has published 247 peer-reviewed papers. Dr. Johnson advises the Surgeon General personally. These men could make or break David's career. He looked directly at me. Brooke, your role tonight is simple. Be invisible. Invisible. The word that had defined my entire existence. We've told everyone you work in technology consulting, Mom added quickly, consulting her notes like medical charts. It sounds professional without being specific. If anyone asks details, say you help businesses with computer systems. Nothing about games, David interjected with desperate urgency. Nothing about apps. Nothing about basements. Dr. Harrison is old school. Dad continued, warming to his strategic briefing. He expects to meet accomplished individuals. Your lifestyle choices might seem concerning to someone of his stature. Concerning, like revolutionizing cognitive medicine was concerning. Brooke, I'm begging you. David's voice cracked with genuine desperation. This is my one shot, Doctor. Harrison could recommend me for Johns Hopkins. Doctor. Johnson could open doors I've dreamed about my entire life. He leaned forward, his eyes pleading. Please don't mention your situation. Can you just be normal for 3 hours? Can you pretend to be someone they could respect? Normal respect. The words that had haunted me since childhood. We're not ashamed of you, Dad said, his voice taking on that clinical tone he used when delivering difficult diagnosis. But we are realistic about perceptions. These doctors are accustomed to accomplished people, professional people. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock. Dr. William Harrison stood in our doorway like medical royalty. Distinguished silver hair, confident bearing, the unmistakable aura of Harvard authority. Dad practically genulected as they shook hands. Dear Harrison, such an honor to welcome you to our home. Thank you for having me, Michael. I'm excited to meet your family. Mom appeared with wine, her movements choreographed with nervous precision. Your preferred vintage Doctor 2018 Cabernet Sauvignon. You're too kind, Linda. 10 minutes later, Dr. Robert Johnson arrived. If Harrison was medical royalty, Johnson was the emperor, NIH director, advisor to presidents, cognitive aging authority supreme. The room's energy shifted as Dad introduced him around like a precious relic. Dear Johnson, your latest NIH publication on cognitive intervention absolutely revolutionary. The algorithms you described, the mysterious researcher you cited, B. Thompson, a fascinating work. My wine glass nearly slipped from my hand. He was talking about my research, my algorithms, my work that he'd been praising without knowing my name. But then Dad continued, his voice carrying that familiar tone of medical superiority. Though I have to say, all this computer-based treatment seems questionable to me. Real medicine requires human interaction, not screen time. These Silicon Valley types prey on desperate families. Indeed, Johnson replied with obvious enthusiasm, apparently not hearing Dad's skepticism. B. Thompson's contributions have reshaped our entire field. Whoever this researcher is, they're a genius. I suppose, Dad said dismissively. But I worry about the long-term effects. Nothing replaces traditional medical intervention. I positioned myself near the kitchen archway, close enough to hear everything while appearing appropriately invisible, the role I'd perfected over 27 years. As the evening progressed, I watched my family perform their elaborate dance of medical worship. Dad hung on every word from Harrison-like gospel while simultaneously dismissing my field as charlatanism. Mom served appetizers with the reverence of communion. David sat frozen in ambitious terror, waiting for his moment to shine. And through it all, they discussed my work, my research, my revolutionary contributions to cognitive medicine. Without knowing, they were praising the basement creep. The irony was so perfect, it made my chest ache with suppressed laughter. This was it. The moment I'd been waiting for. The stage was set. The players assembled. The perfect storm of revelation about to break. In 5 minutes, Dr. Harrison would notice me. In 10 minutes, he'd ask about my work. In 15 minutes, everything would change forever. The basement creep was about to step into the spotlight. The dining room had never looked more elegant. Crystal glasses caught the canlight like prisms, casting rainbow fragments across the white tablecloth. 30 of Chicago's most prestigious medical professionals filled the space with animated conversation about research breakthroughs and clinical innovations. Dr. William Harrison sat at the head table like medical royalty, his silver hair catching the light as he gestured enthusiastically. Dr. Robert Johnson occupied the chair to his right, nodding thoughtfully as they discussed the latest developments in cognitive rehabilitation. My family had positioned themselves like proud peacocks around the room. Dad stood near Dr. Harrison's table, hanging on every word with the devotion of a medical school student. Mom fluttered between the kitchen and dining room, ensuring every detail met her impossible standards. David sat directly across from Dr. Harrison, his posture rigid with nervous energy as he waited for his moment to shine. And me? I arranged final details like the invisible daughter I'd always been. Straightening silverware, refilling water glasses, ensuring everything appeared perfect for David's big moment. The role I'd played for 27 years. You know, Robert, Dr. Harrison said, his voice carrying the authority of Harvard Medical School. I've been trying to identify this B. Thompson researcher for months now. My hand froze on a water pitcher. The Memory Palace algorithms are absolutely revolutionary. Harrison continued. Whoever this person is, they are reshaping the entire field of cognitive medicine. The neuroplasticity applications alone have revolutionized how we approach memory formation. Dr. Johnson leaned forward with obvious enthusiasm. William, I've been saying the same thing for 2 years. B. Thompson's work forms the foundation of our NIH recommendations. The cognitive training protocols show 94% efficacy rates in clinical trials. It's the Einstein discovery of our generation. Absolutely brilliant. Harrison agreed. Revolutionary, game-changing. The adaptive algorithms that personalize to individual brain patterns. Pure genius. We're all desperately trying to figure out who B. Thompson actually is. David seized his opportunity with the eagerness of an ambitious medical student. Doctors, that sounds fascinating. What exactly makes this research so special compared to other cognitive training approaches? Harrison's eyes lit up with professional passion. The sophistication is extraordinary, David. Most cognitive training uses static exercises, one-size-fits-all approaches that show minimal long-term benefits. But B. Thompson's algorithms adapt in real time to individual neurological patterns. They identify cognitive weaknesses and target them with precision that rivals pharmaceutical interventions. The memory retention improvements alone, Johnson added, average 30% increases within 60 days. Processing speed enhancements show 25% measurable gains across all age groups. Harvard Medical School now teaches B. Thompson's algorithms as core curriculum in our neuroplasticity courses. I stood frozen near the kitchen archway, watching my family absorb praise for work they'd spent 10 years calling worthless computer games. Dr. Harrison continued with growing excitement. The developer understands neuroplasticity better than most neuroscientists with decades of research experience. The way the algorithms target specific neural pathways while strengthening overall cognitive architecture, it's methodologically perfect. What's remarkable, Johnson said, is the practical application. Most academic research remains theoretical for decades, but B. Thompson has created technology that immediately helps real people with real cognitive challenges. The Veterans Administration uses their protocols exclusively now. $15 million in federal contracts, because the results are undeniable. Dad leaned forward with obvious pride in his proximity to these medical giants. It sounds like this B. Thompson person has made quite an impact on your field. Impact? Harrison laughed. Dar Thompson. This researcher has done more to advance cognitive medicine than most of us accomplish in entire careers. The NIH cites their work in 47 separate publications. Medical facilities across the country have implemented their protocols as standard care. Extraordinary contributions. Johnson agreed. We're all hoping to identify B. Thompson eventually. Professional conferences, research symposiums, everyone wants to meet the genius behind this revolution. The irony was so perfect it made my chest ache. For 10 years, they dismissed my work as basement computer games. Now they sat in rapt attention as medical authorities described my research as revolutionary genius. Dr. Harrison turned to me during the appetizer course, his manner warm but distracted. I apologize, my dear. Here we are discussing work when we should be celebrating David's engagement. How rude of me to monopolize conversation with shop talk. The room seemed to hold its breath. Dad's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Mom's smile became rigid with barely concealed panic. David's eyes shot warning signals across the table like emergency flares. But before Dr. Harrison could ask about my work, Amanda suddenly leaned forward with excitement, addressing him directly. Dr. Harrison, I hope you don't mind me interrupting, but I have to tell you about something amazing, she said, her face glowing with enthusiasm. My grandmother has early-stage dementia, and we've been using this incredible app called Memory Palace. It's completely transformed her quality of life. Doctor. Harrison's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Did you say Memory Palace? Yes. Her memory scores improved 40% in just 2 months. She can remember conversations, play cards with us, follow TV shows again. Whoever created it is a genius. The change in Dr. Harrison's demeanor was instantaneous and dramatic. His eyes widened with the same expression I'd seen in researchers who just discovered a breakthrough. Amanda, you're talking about the Memory Palace, the cognitive training application developed by B. Thompson. That's right. B. Thompson. My supervisor at Northwestern Memorial says she's revolutionized cognitive rehabilitation, but she's like a ghost in the medical community. No one knows who she really is. Dr. Johnson had been listening with growing excitement. Miss Rodriguez, your grandmother has been using the most advanced cognitive rehabilitation technology ever developed. B. Thompson's algorithms are the foundation of our NIH research protocols. Dad looked confused by the sudden intensity. What's all this excitement about a computer game? Computer game? Dr. Harrison's voice carried new reverence. Dr. Thompson. Thompson's work represents the most significant breakthrough in cognitive medicine in decades. This isn't a game. It's a revolutionary medical intervention. Amanda continued enthusiastically, unaware of what she was unleashing. I wish I could meet this B. Thompson person and thank her personally. The way her technology helps families. It's like she understands exactly what we go through when someone we love starts losing their memories. The room had fallen completely silent. 30. Medical professionals were now focused on our table, drawn by the mention of the legendary B. Thompson. Doctor. Harrison turned to me with polite curiosity. Your father mentioned you work in technology consulting. Given Amanda's wonderful experience with Memory Palace, I'm curious, what type of consulting do you do? This was the moment. But instead of the careful reveal I'd planned, Amanda had already set the stage perfectly. The irony was poetic. David's fiancée had unknowingly become the instrument of my revelation. I develop mobile applications, I said calmly, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Specifically, cognitive training software for elderly users. Doctor. Harrison's eyebrows lifted with sudden professional interest. Cognitive training? How fascinating. What company do you work for? The room fell silent except for the soft clink of silverware against china. My family's eyes pleaded for continued discretion, but Amanda had already opened the door. Cogniplay Games, I said simply. We specialize in evidence-based cognitive rehabilitation. Our main product is called Memory Palace. Amanda gasped audibly. Wait, you created Memory Palace? The effect rippled through the room like an earthquake. Dr. Harrison's wineglass stopped halfway to his lips, suspended in midair as his face registered shock. Dr. Johnson's eyes widened to astronomical proportions, his mouth falling open in undisguised amazement. Several other doctors at nearby tables turned to stare, their conversations dying mid-sentence. Memory Palace? Harrison whispered, his voice barely audible above the sudden silence. The Memory Palace? Dad looked like he'd been struck by lightning, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and dawning comprehension. Mom's face showed pure bewilderment, her eyes darting between the doctor's shocked expressions and my calm demeanor. David's mouth hung open in genuine confusion. I don't understand, Linda whispered, her voice shaking. Why are they reacting like that? What's Memory Palace? Dr. Harrison set down his wineglass with trembling hands. Miss Thompson, he said, his voice carrying new reverence that made the entire room lean forward. Are you telling me you're the B. Thompson, the developer of the Memory Palace cognitive training system? The researcher whose algorithms have revolutionized our entire field? Before I could answer, Dr. Johnson stood up so suddenly, his chair scraped against the hardwood floor. Dear God, he breathed, his voice filled with awe. You're beat, Thompson, the mysterious genius we've been trying to identify for 2 years. Your research forms the cornerstone of our national cognitive health initiatives. Word spread through the dining room like wildfire. Doctors turned in their chairs. Conversations stopped mid-sentence, and all eyes focused on me with sudden, intense interest. She's the Memory Palace developer, someone whispered. The B. Thompson we've all been reading about, came another voice. The cognitive training revolutionary? A third person added. 30 medical professionals turned to stare at me as if I just revealed myself as a Nobel laureate hiding in plain sight. Dr. Harrison continued, his voice filled with professional awe. Miss Thompson, your work has improved cognitive function for millions of people worldwide. The memory retention improvements, 30% average increases across all demographics. The processing speed enhancements, 25% measurable gains that persist long-term. Harvard Medical School teaches your algorithms in our advanced neuroplasticity curriculum. Dr. Johnson added his institutional weight to the growing recognition. The Veterans Administration uses your technology exclusively for cognitive rehabilitation. $15 million in federal contracts because your protocols show unprecedented efficacy rates. Your cognitive training has prevented thousands of dementia cases through early intervention. But wait, Dr. Harrison said, turning to Dad with barely concealed amazement. Dear Thompson, do you realize what your daughter has accomplished? She's contributed more to cognitive medicine than most researchers achieve in entire lifetimes. Her work will be studied and applied for generations. Dad stared at me as if seeing a stranger. I don't understand, he stammered. Brooke makes simple computer games. She works from our basement. This must be some mistake. The room erupted in professional amazement at his words. Dr. Harrison's response was swift and gentle, but devastating. Dr. Thompson, there's no mistake. Your daughter is the CEO of an $85 million company. She employs 45 people across 3 states. Her personal annual income exceeds most medical practices. She's revolutionized an entire field of medicine. But she's unemployed, Mom whispered, her voice breaking. She lives in our basement. She plays computer games all day. We've been worried about her mental health for years. Dr. Johnson's voice carried the weight to federal authority. Mrs. Thompson, your daughter has helped 8.2 million people improve their cognitive function. The NIH has cited her research in 47 peer-reviewed publications. She's achieved more medical impact than most doctors accomplish in entire careers. David protested with the desperation of someone watching their worldview collapse. This can't be right. I'm the successful one. I'm in medical school building a real career. Brooke is the family failure. She's never accomplished anything meaningful in her life. Doctor. Harrison's response was immediate and devastating. Young man, your sister has saved more lives through cognitive prevention than most doctors save through medical intervention. Her training protocols have prevented thousands of dementia cases. She's achieved more medical impact than most of us ever will. The silence that followed was profound and complete. I stood up slowly, feeling every eye in the room focus on me with new understanding. Thank you, Dr. Harrison, Dr. Johnson, for your kind words. I think it's time my family heard the complete truth. The truth I've been hiding for 10 years. My voice carried clearly through the silent room. You called me a basement creep. You were right about the basement part. That's where I built the technology that revolutionized cognitive medicine. That's where I created algorithms that help millions of people maintain their memory and independence. That's where I developed the research that became the foundation for your careers. I looked at each family member in turn. I hid this success because I loved you, because I wanted to be the daughter you could accept and be proud of, but I was never the failure you convinced yourselves I was. I was never the burden you made me believe I was. Dad's face crumpled with the weight of 10 years' worth of misplaced disappointment. Brooke, we had no idea. All these years we thought you were wasting your life, but you were saving other people's lives. How can you ever forgive us? I don't need your apologies, I said gently, my voice carrying newfound strength. I needed your recognition, and now I have it. I needed to stop hiding who I am, and now I have. I needed to believe in myself completely, and now I do. I looked around the room at 30 medical professionals who now saw me clearly for the first time. I am Dr. Brooke Thompson, CEO of Cogniplay Games. I've helped 8.2 million people improve their cognitive function. I've contributed more to medical research than most doctors, and I'm done hiding who I am to make others comfortable with who they think I should be. The room erupted in applause that started with Dr. Harrison and spread like wildfire through every medical professional present. They stood clapping with the respect reserved for true innovation and achievement. My family sat in stunned silence, watching their peers celebrate the daughter they'd spent 10 years calling a failure. The basement creep had finally stepped into the light. The applause died down slowly, leaving behind a silence filled with new understanding. 30 medical professionals looked at me with respect I'd never seen before. My family sat stunned, watching their peers celebrate the daughter they'd spent 10 years calling a failure. Dr. Harrison approached me as the formal dinner concluded. His entire demeanor transformed from polite interest to genuine reverence. Miss Thompson, I hope you'll consider a collaboration with Harvard. We'd be honored to have your expertise guide our research. Dad watched in complete amazement as Harvard Medical School's most distinguished professor courted his basement creep daughter like she was Nobel Prize material. We've been struggling with implementation challenges in our clinical trials. Dr. Harrison continued, his voice carrying the humility of a student addressing a master. Your algorithms work flawlessly in real-world applications, but we can't replicate your success in laboratory settings. That's because laboratory cognitive training lacks emotional context, I replied. The words flowing naturally after years of hidden expertise. Memory formation requires personal meaning. My algorithms adapt not just to cognitive patterns, but to individual life experiences and emotional triggers. The surrounding doctors leaned in, hanging on every word. These were the same medical professionals my family had worshipped as intellectual gods, and they were treating me like I held the secrets of the universe. Doctor. Thompson. Doctor. Johnson extended his hand with reverence reserved for Nobel laureates. The NIH would like you to keynote our National Cognitive Health Conference. 3,000 medical professionals would attend from around the world. Your research deserves the highest platform we can provide, he continued, his voice carrying federal authority. We'd also like to discuss a permanent advisory position. The President's Council on Aging has specifically requested your input on national policy. Around the room, doctors approached with business cards and collaboration requests. Dr. Patricia Williams from Johns Hopkins pushed forward eagerly. Ms. Thompson, we've been implementing Memory Palace in our stroke rehabilitation unit. The recovery rates are unprecedented. Could you possibly consult on our expansion? Dr. Michael Rodriguez from Northwestern Memorial joined the growing circle. The Alzheimer's Association wants to fund a nationwide study based on your protocols. We're talking about a $50 million research initiative. The invisible daughter had become the evening's most sought-after guest. David appeared at my side, his face cycling through emotions I'd never seen before. Confusion, shame, and something that might have been pride. Brooke, I had no idea. All these years, I thought I was the successful one building a real career. You are successful, I said gently, meaning every word. You're training to save lives in emergency medicine. That's extraordinary, meaningful work that directly helps people in crisis. But you've already saved millions of lives, he whispered, his voice breaking slightly. How did we not know? How did we miss something this enormous? I looked at my brother, the golden child, the family success story, the one who'd always made me feel inadequate. For the first time, I saw him clearly, not as my superior, but as my equal, someone trying to find his place in the world, just like I had been. Because you were looking at what I was doing, not what I was achieving, I said softly. You saw the basement and the computers and assumed failure. But sometimes the most revolutionary work happens in the most unexpected places. Dad approached hesitantly, his medical authority completely stripped away by revelation. The man who diagnosed me with antisocial personality disorder now faced the reality that I'd achieved more medical impact than he ever would. Brooke, I owe you the deepest apology any father has ever owed a daughter, he said, his voice thick with emotion. We called you a failure while you were succeeding beyond our wildest dreams. We called you antisocial while you were helping millions of people. His hands shook as he reached toward me. All those years, we thought we were protecting you from unrealistic expectations. But you were already living far beyond our expectations. You were living in a realm we couldn't even imagine. Mom approached with tears streaming down her face, her pharmacy training finally allowing her to understand the magnitude of what I'd accomplished. Honey, I've been dispensing medications for memory problems for 20 years. I know how desperate families become when someone they love starts losing their memories. She took my hands and hers. You've given those families hope. You've given grandchildren more time with their grandparents. You've given couples more years of recognition and love. How can we ever forgive ourselves for not seeing this? I looked at their faces, shocked, ashamed, amazed, but also genuinely hopeful for the first time in years. The weight of 10 years of hiding suddenly felt unbearable, but also completely lifted. I don't need apologies, I said, my voice carrying newfound strength and clarity. I needed recognition, and now I have it. I needed to stop hiding who I am, and now I have. I needed to believe in myself completely, and now I do. But more than anything, I continued looking around the room at the medical professionals who now understood my worth. I needed to prove to myself that the basement creep could become exactly who she was meant to be. Amanda joined our family circle, her face glowing with new understanding and what looked like genuine awe. "Brooke, you're the B. Thompson who saved my grandmother. You're the reason she can still remember my wedding day, still follow our conversations, still play cards with us on Sundays." Her voice broke with emotion. "Do you know what that means to our family? Do you know how many precious moments you've given us that we thought were lost forever?" "Keep being the nurse who cares about her patients," I replied, meaning it completely. "That's what matters. Your grandmother isn't just a success story. She's someone you love. Never forget that the technology only works because people like you implement it with compassion." Dr. Harrison cleared his throat, commanding attention from the entire room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've witnessed something extraordinary tonight. Not just the revelation of B. Thompson's identity, but a reminder of why we entered medicine in the first place." He raised his wine glass to Dr. Brooke Thompson, who proves that genius can emerge from anywhere, that revolutionary work can happen in basements, and that sometimes the most important discoveries come from those we overlook. The room erupted in applause again, but this time it felt different. Not just professional recognition, but genuine respect and admiration from people who understood the magnitude of what I'd achieved. As the formal evening began to wind down, I found myself surrounded by colleagues instead of relatives, peers instead of people who pied me. Dr. Johnson pressed his business card into my hand. "Call me Monday. We need to discuss your role in shaping national cognitive health policy." Dr. Williams leaned in conspiratorially. "The MacArthur Foundation is announcing their Genius Grants next month. Your name has been submitted for consideration." But the moment that mattered most came when David pulled me aside as guests began to leave. "Rook," he said quietly, "I want to change my residency focus. I want to specialize in geriatric medicine. I want to understand what you've built from the clinical side." "Why?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Because tonight I realized that preventing suffering is just as important as treating it," he replied. "Maybe more important. I want to be part of what you're doing. I want to help people keep their memories instead of just treating them after they've lost them." I smiled at my brother, seeing him clearly for the first time. "The medical field needs both approaches, David. Emergency medicine saves lives in crisis. Cognitive medicine preserves lives over time. We're both fighting the same fight from different angles." As the evening concluded and the last guests departed, my family stood together in our living room, the same room where they'd held their intervention just hours earlier. But everything had changed. I was no longer the basement creep who needed fixing. I was Dr. Brooke Thompson, medical innovator, CEO, and the daughter who had taught her family that success comes in forms they'd never imagined. The basement creep had finally stepped into the light, and the light revealed exactly who she'd always been underneath their limitations. 6 months later, everything had changed in ways I could never have imagined. Sunday dinners at the Thompson house had become something entirely different. Instead of medical journal discussions that excluded me, our conversations now centered around my latest research breakthroughs. Dad asked thoughtful, informed questions about cognitive algorithms and neuroplasticity applications. Mom proudly displayed my Forbes cover in the pharmacy break room, telling every customer who would listen about her daughter's revolutionary work. My daughter invented the technology that's helping your mother remember your name. Became her standard conversation starter with elderly customers picking up memory medications. David had made the most dramatic change of all. 3 months after the engagement party, he'd formally requested a switch in his residency focus from emergency medicine to geriatric psychiatry, specifically cognitive rehabilitation. "I want to contribute to cognitive health from the clinical side," he told me during one of our new weekly coffee meetings. "Maybe together we can help even more people bridge the gap between losing their memories and getting them back." The transformation in our family dynamic was profound. Where once I'd been the problem child requiring intervention, I'd become the family consultant. Dad regularly called me about elderly patients showing early signs of cognitive decline. Mom asked my opinion on new memory-related medications her pharmacy was considering stocking. "Your technology has transformed how I practice medicine," Dad explained to his medical colleagues during their monthly rounds. "My daughter revolutionized my entire understanding of preventive cognitive care. I used to wait for symptoms to worsen before referring patients to specialists. Now I recommend cognitive training at the first sign of memory concerns." Thompson Family Medicine had become one of the first small practices in Chicago to implement comprehensive memory palace protocols. Dad had invested in tablets for the waiting room, loaded with my cognitive training software. Elderly patients now spent their appointment wait times improving their memory function instead of reading outdated magazines. And the irony wasn't lost on me. The basement they'd been ashamed of had become the birthplace of technology that now enhanced their professional reputations. I'd moved into a stunning downtown Chicago penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that stretched to the horizon. But I'd kept an office in my parents' basement, not out of necessity or nostalgia, but out of choice and principle. That basement was where I discovered who I really was, where I'd learned that external validation was optional, where I'd built something meaningful despite being told I was wasting my life. The basement office had become my creative sanctuary. Some of my best algorithmic breakthroughs still happened in that familiar space, surrounded by the monitors and equipment that had witnessed my transformation from family disappointment to medical innovator. The term basement creep had undergone its own transformation, becoming my badge of honor and a powerful brand. Forbes had featured it as their headline, "From Basement Creep to Medical Revolutionary: How Brooke Thompson Changed Cognitive Medicine." The Wall Street Journal ran a feature titled, "The Basement That Built a Medical Empire." Harvard Business Review published my guest editorial, "Innovation in Unexpected Places: Why the Best Breakthroughs Happen Outside Traditional Institutions." My upcoming memoir, contracted with a major publisher for an advance that exceeded Dad's lifetime earnings, carried the title, "The Creep Who Changed Medicine: A Basement Revolutionary Guide to Building Success in the Shadows." The book proposal had generated a bidding war among publishers. The winning editor explained their enthusiasm. "Your story isn't just about technology or family dynamics. It's about the millions of people who feel invisible, undervalued, or misunderstood. You've proven that genius can emerge from anywhere, and that sometimes the most important work happens in the places others overlook." Speaking engagements flooded in from universities, medical conferences, and technology summits worldwide. The Harvard Medical School commencement address, the keynote at the International Conference on Aging and Cognition, a TED Talk that would be filmed next month titled "The Revolutionary Power of Being Underestimated." But beneath all the professional recognition and financial success, the greatest transformation was personal. I'd stopped apologizing for who I was. I'd stopped hiding my achievements to protect others' feelings. I'd stopped pretending to be less capable to make others comfortable. The letter that meant the most, though, came from Amanda 3 months after the engagement party. "Brooke, my grandmother, asked me to tell you something special. Last Sunday, she was playing cards with us and suddenly stopped mid-om. She looked at me with the clearest eyes I'd seen in years and said, 'That nice lady who helped my memory come back. She must be an angel sent from heaven.' When I told her you were even better, that you were family, she smiled and said, 'Angels often come disguised as family members we don't appreciate enough. Your technology didn't just give us more time with Grandma Rose. It gave us better time, quality time. Time filled with recognition, laughter, and love instead of confusion and frustration.' She remembered every detail of our wedding day last month. 'Brooke, every single detail because of you.' But the letter continued with news that touched something even deeper. 'I wanted you to know that I've decided to pursue my master's degree in gerontological nursing specializing in cognitive health. Your work inspired me to think bigger about how we can help families facing memory loss. I want to be part of the solution you started. I want to help implement your technology in clinical settings and train other nurses to support families through cognitive transitions. The ripple effects of stepping out of hiding continued to expand in ways I'd never anticipated. Dr. Harrison had offered me that visiting professorship at Harvard, which I'd accepted for 1 semester a year. Teaching the next generation of cognitive scientists felt like coming full circle. From the basement creep whose dreams were dismissed to the professor shaping future innovators. The NIH advisory position had led to direct influence on national policy. The President's Council on Aging had adopted my recommendations for nationwide cognitive health screening and prevention programs. Medicare was piloting coverage for cognitive training protocols based on my research. Most surprisingly, my story had resonated far beyond the medical community. Young people in STEM fields contacted me daily through social media and professional networks. The messages were remarkably similar. Thank you for proving that different doesn't mean wrong. You showed me that my passion for coding wasn't antisocial. It was preparation for changing the world. Because of your story, I stopped apologizing for spending time on projects others didn't understand. You gave me permission to be brilliant in my own way. The Brooke Thompson Foundation, established with a significant portion of my earnings, focused on supporting young innovators whose work was misunderstood or undervalued. Basement labs, garage workshops, spare bedroom research projects. We funded the spaces where traditional institutions feared to invest. The first grant recipient was a 19-year-old who developed a revolutionary water purification system in her parents' shed, while her family insisted she focus on practical career paths. The second went to a former military veteran using virtual reality therapy for PTSD treatment from his 1-bedroom apartment, while VA bureaucrats dismissed his approach as gaming. Change had come for my family too, in ways that surprised everyone. David's switch to geriatric psychiatry had revealed a natural talent for connecting with elderly patients that his emergency medicine training had never tapped. He'd found his calling working with families navigating memory loss, combining clinical expertise with genuine empathy. I understand now what you were doing all those years, he told me during our last coffee meeting. You weren't hiding from reality. You were building a better reality for people who needed hope. Mom had become an unexpected advocate for cognitive health awareness in the pharmacy community, organizing seminars for pharmacists on recognizing early memory concerns and recommending appropriate interventions. Her practical medical knowledge combined with her newfound understanding of my work made her an effective educator for healthcare professionals who interacted with elderly patients daily. Dad had perhaps changed the most. The man who diagnosed me with antisocial personality disorder had become one of the most vocal advocates for recognizing unconventional brilliance in young people. He'd started mentoring medical students who struggled with traditional learning approaches, helping them find their unique paths to contributing to healthcare. I learned from my daughter that genius doesn't always look the way we expect it to. He told his colleagues, sometimes the most important medical breakthroughs come from people we overlook because they don't fit our preconceptions about success. As I stood in my penthouse office looking out at the Chicago skyline that had witnessed my entire transformation, I reflected on the journey from basement creep to medical revolutionary. The view was spectacular, but the basement office where it all began remained my favorite workspace. The greatest victory hadn't been proving my family wrong about my potential. It had been proving myself right about my worth. It had been learning that external validation, while nice, was never as important as internal conviction. The basement creep had become exactly who she was meant to be. Dr. Brooke Thompson, medical innovator, teacher, advocate, and the daughter who taught her family that success comes in infinite forms, most of them unexpected. Many of them invisible until someone brave enough to look beyond surface appearances recognizes their true value. Sometimes the greatest revolution starts in the basement. What do you think about Brooke's story? If you were in her position, would you keep building your dreams in silence until they were too big to ignore? Or would you demand recognition from the start, even if it meant facing constant dismissal? Have you ever felt invisible to the people whose approval you craved most? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow for more stories about finding your true worth, building success on your own terms, and the courage to stay authentic even when the world expects you to be someone else. Remember, the best validation comes from within. But sometimes the people who hurt you most need to see exactly what they threw away.